Today, January 13th, our Take 5 with the Saints continues with Bishop Hilary of Poitiers, a very important city in modern-day France, a very important city in Gaul of the 4th century, and a bishop who found himself in the crossfire between two warring factions of the burgeoning Christian faith in the 4th century. So, before I say more about him, one of our lessons for today that speaks a lot about the life and challenges of Hilary's ministry as bishop comes from Luke chapter 12, verses 8 through 12. Jesus said, "And I tell you, everyone who acknowledges me before others, the Son of Man also will acknowledge before the angels of God. But whoever denies me before others will be denied before the angels of God. And everyone who speaks a word against the Son of Man will be forgiven. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will not be forgiven. When they bring you before the synagogues, the rulers, and the authorities, do not worry about how you are to defend yourselves or what you are to say, for the Holy Spirit will teach you at that very hour what you ought to say." Hilary, whose Latin name Hilarious means happy or cheerful, as you might guess, hilarious, was born in the city of Poitiers, the city he was to become bishop in the year 315. But he was not born into a Christian household. He was born into an upper-class pagan household that also afforded him the opportunity to have a wide diversity of classical education of the day. And in particular, he learned and took great interest in his studies of the Old and New Testament and of the history of the Jewish faith. And ultimately, that turned his interest into very early Christian theology. And at the age of 30, after going between paganism and Neoplatonism, he and his family were baptized in the year 345 into the faith of the church. Within 5 years, his people in Poitiers, along with his colleagues in ministry, were so impressed by his personal skills and his theological acumen that he was made bishop of Poitiers in 350. And in entering this position, he also entered into a fairly controversial arena of the day, a battle that helped to shape the very framework and nature and understanding of how we practice Christianity today, a battle between what were known as the Orthodox or Athanasian Christians who believed, as we do today, that Jesus was part of what became known as the Trinity. He and the Father and the Holy Spirit were all separate persons, yet all were God, versus what became known as the Arian party after its greatest or well-known spokesman, Arius, who argued that Jesus was indeed one of the greatest, if not the greatest of God's creations, but was not quite to the level of God. While oftentimes we moderns, and even in the church, like to dismiss this as quote-unquote theological quibbling, the fact of the matter is it's a pretty important debate. To pray to Jesus, if you're praying to a human being, is a far different reality than it is praying to Jesus, who literally is the Son of God, nature of God, sitting at the right hand of God and able to understand us fully and completely in his divine and human nature. As you can imagine, Hilary, being a saint in our calendar, took the Orthodox position. But that brought him into a little trouble because, in particular, the emperor of the day, Constantius II, who was the son of the great Constantine, who was the emperor who ultimately issued the Edict of Toleration and then made Christianity an officially recognized religion within the Roman Empire. Constantius was a Christian, but he took the Arian side on matters. And when Hilary began to publicly disagree with some of his hand-picked Arian bishops, in the year 356, he exiled Hilary from Poitiers to Phrygia, which is now part of western Turkey or modern-day Turkey. But even while in Phrygia, Hilary continued to exercise his pastoral oversight of his people from hundreds of miles away. And it was also in his exile some of his greatest theological works, in particular his work on the Trinity, in speaking about the relationship between the three persons of God, became one of the most widely respected theological works in the Orthodox argument. By popular opinion, pressure was put upon Constantius and other bishops to reappoint him reinstall him as the Bishop of Poitiers, where he continued, as his biography says, to fight angrily against those whom he deemed to be incorrect in their position, and yet he continued his gentle and loving care towards the people of his hometown and in his see of Poitiers. Hilary was a man who lived up to his name. Great charisma, great gentleness, but also one who understood that one of the roles of a bishop, as we heard in Luke's gospel, was to stand up and acknowledge the truth of the faith in front of those who never threatened his life, but certainly threatened his standing as a bishop in the church, for his faithfulness, for his resilience, and for his gentleness as a wonderful pastor. We remember him and for the work that he did this day that helped to shape the faith that we so eagerly receive and find nurturing to us here today. So that's all for today. Tomorrow, January 14th, tune in. Our saint for the day tomorrow will be George Berkeley. Take care and see you then.